So this video is called 5 Reasons Why It's So Much Better to Live Your Life be able to go with the flow. Before I start, it's not genetic. You might think that, it's just a thing that you can either do or you can't. That's not the way your brain works. Your brain is changeable, it's moldable, it's neuroplastic. That basically means you can change it. And yes, genetics means that you can naturally be an optimistic or a pessimistic person, but that's only a tiny proportion of it. So much of how you live your life in terms of the things that you think and the moods and the emotions that you feel is down to you and the way you live your life. So a lot of this, if this is one of the first videos you've watched from me, this might be kind of mind-blowing stuff, but it's really powerful because when you know how your mind works, it's an absolute game changer, and you can make so much progress just by watching these videos and putting into practice the advice that I give. So if you're new, there's been quite a few new members in the past week. Let me just introduce myself. I normally forget to do this, but I've remembered. So I'm a solution-focused hypnotherapist, and I give solution-focused hypnotherapy. Clue is in the title, but a lot of what I do as well, I don't just give hypnotherapy with my clients. It's very important that the people that I work with learn how the brain works, because it is a game changer. And the things that I give for free in this group is the tip of the iceberg. So if you like what I say and you are interested in working with me, then please feel free to drop me a message. Okay, so let's get started. 5 reasons why it's so much more important, or why it's so much better for you to go with the flow. Number 1, if you don't go with the flow, it shows that you are in your primitive brain. And that means that life is so much harder for you. So the primitive brain is how we respond if we are not going with the flow. Yeah, if something unexpected happens and it makes you feel irritated, or it throws you off balance. A lot of clients, when they come to me, they say it's when I'm in a good place, it's great. I'm in control. I have my morning routine and I do things the way I want to do them, and it's great. But it doesn't take much to push me over the edge, and then I can sort of spiral downwards. And so that's the primitive brain responding. That's you reacting and living out of your primitive brain. It's a very negative place to be. And so again, if you've watched lots of my videos, you'll know this, and it's just a good repetition for you. But if you're new, the primitive brain is basically your brain in survival mode. Okay, so it's fight or flight, and your brain is designed for survival. Okay, it's as simple as that. Your brain doesn't care about whether you're happy or confident or successful. It just cares about staying alive, because we are, our brains are still exactly the same as they were when we were cavemen and women, and that, the number one goal there was to survive. Okay, so we're living modern day life with that kind of brain. So yeah, if you can't go with the flow, it shows that you're in your primitive brain, and therefore life is so much harder for you. Okay, so let's say then something unexpected happens, whether it's at work or something gets cancelled and it affects your day, and you were having a good day, but then this throws you off track because it's really either irritated you or it's made you feel anxious and worried, and it's sent your mind into overdrive, or it's stressed you out. These are primitive brain responses and primitive brain reactions. And so it's sent your brain into fight or flight mode. And this is very stressful for your brain. Even if you don't feel it stressful, it is on a chemical level. What's happening is that your brain is releasing cortisol and adrenaline and stress hormones, and this goes into what we call a stress bucket. Okay, so it's a metaphorical stress bucket that you've got in your brain, and when you're living in your primitive brain or operating from your primitive brain, your stress bucket fills up very, very quickly. And that's what I mean by, you can be doing fine, but if a small thing happens and it throws you off for the rest of the day, that's a sign that your stress bucket is quite full. And so, yeah, another reason why it's good to be able to go with the flow is that it doesn't add to your stress bucket. If you don't have a negative reaction to something that is unexpected, then it's not going to go in your stress bucket. And when your stress bucket levels are lower, you have more patience, you are able to stay calm more easily, you're able to go with the flow, you're tolerant, you have more empathy, you can think more clearly. All of these things are characteristics of the intellectual mind. And now the intellectual mind is like where you're living from if you're not in your primitive brain. That is the goal. That's where you want to be living your life day in, day out, because life is good when you're operating from your intellectual mind. You don't worry about the past or the future. It takes a lot for you to get stressed. You feel resilient, and it's just so much better. Okay? So, number 3. If you are able to go with the flow, you will enjoy your life so much more, because you will be happier and calmer and more resilient, and you will just literally enjoy your life more, because instead of operating from your primitive brain where you are like firefighting and, you know, waiting subconsciously on your guard for the next disaster that's going to happen, even if it's not a disaster, but your perception is all wrong, like, it's just not a nice place to be in your primitive brain. So when you're in your intellectual mind, you are able to enjoy life so much more. You don't worry about what other people think of you. You don't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't worry about what you should have done or what you could have done or what you still need to do. It's just a much more peaceful place to be in your intellectual mind. So yeah, like that reason in itself, you know, if you just take that 20-second explanation, that's everything. That can mean so much to a person, to be able to enjoy the life more and get rid of that mental noise that goes on inside your brain when you're in your primitive brain. Number 4 is you will be able to notice your surroundings much more. Okay, so as I said, if you're able to go with the flow, less is going into your stress bucket. You're able to operate from your intellectual mind, and you don't have that mental noise, and you have more mental clarity, and you aren't worrying about the past or the future. You're able to be more present. And because you're able to be more present, then naturally your awareness of your surroundings is heightened. So you are able to spot the beauty in nature. You're able to hear the birds singing on your way to work. Like, that kind of stuff doesn't get in when your stress bucket is full, when you're worried and you're stuck in your own brain worrying or feeling irritated or whatever. You don't notice the beauty that's all around you. And so, yeah, that's another reason why life is so much more enjoyable from your intellectual brain, because you're able to notice the good things, and not just notice your surroundings, notice positive things that are happening. Because when you're in fight or flight mode, what's going on in your brain is everything, nothing else matters apart from staying alive right now. So your brain, like I said, even if it's a small, unexpected thing, if you don't have much resilience because your stress bucket is full, then it really doesn't take much for you to dip down into your primitive brain. And therefore, everything else, nothing else matters. Happiness doesn't matter. It's just about staying alive. And this sounds pretty drastic, but it feels drastic. It feels really not very nice to live in your primitive brain. And I've had quite a few conversations with clients where, like, they've joined this group, they've watched a few of my videos, they've messaged me, and they're just like, wow, I've never learned so much about my brain. This is just mind-blowing. They didn't realize what was going on. They didn't realize they were in fight or flight mode. They thought maybe this is what life is like for everybody, but really it isn't. Like, when you're living in your intellectual mind, life is so much better. But unfortunately, not many people know this stuff. And so this is why I'm passionate about running this free group here, to share my knowledge. And so if you know that you've got a friend or something that's struggling, please feel free to invite them into this group, because, you know, this kind of stuff should be taught in schools, and it's not. And so therefore, you know, I want to help people. So, yeah, just to sum up. Oh, no, I've got number 5 to go. So the 5th reason why life is so much better when you're able to go with the flow is that it's empowering, okay? And your perception is everything. I think I've mentioned this several times in different videos and maybe done a whole video on this, but literally your perception is everything, because no event in life, no situation is positive or negative. It just is. And it's how you respond that makes it positive or negative. So you can have the same situation happen and somebody will, in their mind, respond to it really positively because they've got a positive mindset and they're able to go with the flow. And another person can just be like, think it's the end of the world because they're thinking worst case scenario in their mind, and the brain cannot tell the difference between real or imagination. And so when you're struggling with worrying, that is awful for your brain because it doesn't know that it's just a worry and worries probably won't happen. It doesn't know that. And so it's really, really struggling with the reality in your mind that is whatever worst case scenario that's going round. And when you're in your primitive brain and you're overthinking, like worst case scenario is a common track for a lot of my clients. And so, yeah, it changes everything when you are able to shift your perception and realize that you choose how you respond to everything. And actually, just while I think about it, I had a new client today that listened to to a podcast that I did recently, and in that podcast I said that your brain can't tell the difference between real and imagination, and that's why things like anxiety is so awful, because your brain is believing that it's actually happening. Now, the positive effect of this is when I work with somebody, we do a visualization of what you can see yourself doing differently. And that's really powerful because then we have hypnosis and it just happens the next day. But what he said to me was he had goosebumps because I asked, what difference would it make to you that you will do this tomorrow? And we're about to put it in his subconscious mind, so it just happens, no effort or willpower is needed. And he's just like, I've got goosebumps, I feel emotional at the thought of being able to do that tomorrow. And then I said, there you go, that's the brain working. That's your brain not knowing the difference between real and imagination and having a chemical reaction that makes you feel so happy that it's making you emotional. That's the positive version of not knowing the difference between real and imagination. But obviously the negative side of it when you're in your primitive brain is like feeling physical symptoms of anxiety. And so back to my fifth point then, your perception is everything. So if you can shift how you are responding and how you are perceiving things, if you can see the positive in situations, then that's empowering for you, because when you react to something in a positive way, i.e. you're able to go with the flow, then less is going to go in your stress bucket. And a full stress bucket, as we've already talked about, is very hard because, you feel like you're firefighting and you're stuck in your primitive brain, and it can affect your sleep and all sorts. So, I hope those are helpful to you, those 5 tips, and I will just sum them up. So the reasons why you're much better off going with the flow is life is much easier when you're in your intellectual mind. If you're able to go with the flow, you're much more likely to be living from your intellectual mind. So my life is much easier. If you are able to not have a negative reaction, then your brain won't go into fight or flight mode, and therefore your stress bucket won't fill up like it would do if you have a negative reaction. And by negative reaction, I mean responding with anger, or feeling stressed, or feeling anxious, or feeling like the wind has gone out of your sails. Yeah, so you could be having a good day and something happens and you're just like, because you're not very resilient. Any of those are classed as negative reactions because they're primitive brain responses. Number 4, I've kind of alluded to it already, but you'll enjoy your life more because when you're living from your intellectual mind, you're happier and you're calmer and you're more resilient. I've lost count. The next one, you'll be able to notice your surroundings more and notice the more positives in your life. So it's another reason why you'll start to enjoy your life more. And the last one, as I said, your perception is everything. So remember that you choose how you respond to everything. And I want to just say that this advice can help you massively, but you might struggle depending on your own unique situation. And people who've worked with me who are in this group still, lots of you are here, you'll resonate with this. Once you've had hypnotherapy, like, it's much easier to put in place a practice, because if your stress bucket levels are so high that you are living in your primitive brain day in, day out, then it's very, very hard to implement my advice. And so you can watch it and just think and feel inspired and just think, yeah, I'm going to do that. But the reality is, when you're in your primitive brain, you're literally in fight or flight and survival mode. So all of the advice from this video goes out the window. So if you are watching this video and feeling like your stress bucket levels are a bit too high, or you know that you're in your primitive brain to the point where you feel like you might need a bit of help, and that could be because of a current situation, or it could be that there's stuff stuck in your stress bucket from the past, then please do feel free to reach out to me, because hypnotherapy brings down your stress bucket levels. So a sign that your stress bucket levels are too high is if you're waking up in the night, or if you're waking up too early, around like 5 a.m. every day, not intentionally, you know, if you don't have an alarm set or whatever, but you just find yourself waking up and that's it, you're done, you're awake for the day, there's no chance of going back to sleep. That's a sign that your stress bucket is too full. And so, yeah, you may need help. And what hypnotherapy will do for you is bring down your stress bucket levels and reprogram your subconscious mind, because your feelings and your emotions and the things that you do to cope when you're in your primitive brain they all come from the subconscious mind. So it's not your fault. You know, you can't help how you feel, but hypnotherapy helps that because it reprograms the subconscious mind. So think of it like a declutter for your brain. There's negative stuff in your subconscious mind because everything you've ever experienced is stored in your subconscious mind. So there's stuff in there, for example, a bad past relationship, or let's say you kind of had a childhood where it was a little bit too strict and therefore you feel like you've got low self-worth as an adult. Believe me, that is so common. Or anything that is affecting how you live your life to the point where you've watched this and you're like, oh, my stress bucket levels are too high and I'm going to struggle to get in my intellectual mind by myself, then feel free to send me a message, ask about how I can help you. On that note, I really do need to go because I have a client in a bit, in a few minutes. And yeah, I hope this has helped. I hope this has been useful. Please feel free to, if you have any questions or comments, pop them down below. Oh, I've just realised people might be commenting, but I can't actually see them. I'm really sorry, actually, if all I'm getting is just notifications that people are watching, but I can't see any comments. So thank you. If you have commented, I'm not ignoring you. I literally can't see them, but I'll be able to see them as soon as I press finish, and I will respond. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you've got any questions, either in the comments or feel free to DM me. And yeah, I'll be back next Thursday with a new video. I've moved my videos to Thursday rather than Wednesday because Thursday's the day where I work all day, and yeah, I'm just in work mode. It's much easier for me than a couple of times I've realised like too late that it's Wednesday and just missed the boat. So yeah, sorry about that in the past. But yeah, I'll be back next Thursday. Yep, thank you very much for watching and see you all next week. Bye.